Hello, hello. I'm starting a little early today because I changed the settings for the stream and I put up the resolution quite a lot. So I really hope it works. If any one of you is already online and you could just give me a bit of feedback how the image looks, that would be really helpful. So the resolution should be now the same as on my monitor, which is a lot. I hope that my Wi-Fi connection can handle that, especially since the internet here in Germany isn't really good. So I'm doing this here on a 50 Mbit line, and I just hope it works. Hi Thomas, how does it look like? Is it looking good? I hope so, because last time it was blurry. A lot better to read now. Awesome. Yeah, this is what I wanted. The stream health is showing in orange now and no longer in green. I don't know what that means. I just hope the stream keeps up. So if you can hear me and it's all working fine so far, I think we are good to go. Yeah, a lot of, well, not a lot, but a few people said that the readability of the last stream wasn't very good, which was kind of sad. I hope it's better now and it's working. I'm no longer, I'm still live? Yeah, it looks like it. It's perfect. That's great. Okay, cool. So I got like 2 minutes left and then we can get started, I guess. Whew, it's super hot here. I'm using a good old trick that I used in previous live streams with the supporter base for Kirby, and everything is on an ice package. So I have an ice package, and on that there's a towel, and on top of that is my MacBook Air, and it's no longer ventilating, so it seems to be happy with it. It seems to be dry as well, so I checked this a couple times, so everything should be fine. It's just cooling down like the bottom of the laptop quite massively. Yeah, but I think we have like 32 degrees inside here or something like this, so yeah, it's hot. Yeah, Thomas said there's more latency now with the bigger stream. I hope this is good, but the 1080p is definitely worth it. Yeah, okay. It doesn't have to be real time anyway, so it has never been. So whenever I was speaking, it took a while when then you replied. So I think that's fine. Okay, let's get started. Hello, hello. It's 3:30, and this is the second episode of me building a website from scratch with Kirby. And yeah, I was really happy that so many of you watched the last episode. This one is building up on the last one. So if you haven't seen the last one, you should watch that first, because this is picking up pretty much at the same point where we left last time. What we did last time, just to give you a bit of backstory here, is we built a very simple website. This is it. It has a project section, which is like a very classical portfolio kind of grid with images and projects. Then we have a small about site, we have a contact site just to make navigation work, basic navigation, edit some fields there. You can click through the projects. Each project has a gallery. So we added all this last time, did a bit of CSS for the site. There's not much of a website of a homepage yet. We didn't do much about this so far. And we also took care of setting up the panel. So this is something that we did also last time. We configured the panel for some page types. So for example, we did this nice image grid for the projects. Then when you click on an image, you get an editing interface for each project, and there is a gallery with all the images from the project, and then some basic information here. And this is basically where we want to pick this project up and move it further. Yeah, with additional features, I will give you more insights into panel configuration, into things that you can do in your templates, and I hope it's going to be fun. First, what I want to do with you as a first step is typical for such portfolio sites. When you have a look at something like this, where you have like the projects on a separate page, and then you have your home page. You would normally probably have some kind of featured list of projects that you would also show on the homepage. Maybe the latest project only, maybe like the 3 latest projects or some featured projects. And then maybe combined later with blog articles or stuff from some docs or maybe some features or whatever you kind of want to put on your homepage as kind of an introduction to the rest of the content of your site. And in order to do that, we somehow need to get the projects that we have here now onto the homepage, and we've never done that before. So we somehow need to find a way to get data from page A and put it on page B, basically. But to get this started, what we need first is we need a new template for our homepage. If we have a look at our templates folder, there is no home PHP yet. So we need a home PHP. Let's create that quickly. Open that up. That's just our default PHP from last time. So computer is super slow. You have to bear with me here. And then in here, we would probably now want to show a couple of those projects. Let's see, but how do we get those? So I can't even tab. So that's probably the stream now. Okay, now it's working. So how do we get from the home template or from the home template to the data from the projects page? Kirby has a template method called page, and that is basically a getter for any kind of page object. So you can move around with this page function and give it any kind of ID of one of the pages that you have. So for example, we can move to the projects, or we could move to a specific project. That works completely independent from your structure, so you can just move around in the content directory structure. The numbers, the prefix numbers are always, they are not included, so you don't have to put the prefix number in front of this. You really just use the folder name that's also in the URL, and you can move around with this. And from here on, you get a regular page object, and from there on you can then access all the fields of that object. So for example, in this case, we can get the title of the animals page, of the animals project, turns up here. If we change it to projects, it will just be the title of the projects page, etc., etc. So from here on, it's really just a regular page object, and we can access the children, we can access the images, the files, whatever you have, the URL, for example, whatever a page object can do, we can get it like this. So that would be our access point to getting the data onto the homepage. So we would probably also create another loop through our children now, and then create a little list again from our projects. But here we would already start to repeat ourselves again, because we already did that. So if we have another look back at the projects PHP template, you can see we have a projects grid already, we have the list ready. So we learned last time that there are snippets, so we can take parts of our templates and cut them basically and move them into a snippet. And this would be a perfect new case for such a snippet. So we create a project snippet, and in that project snippet we put in all this code that we had for the list of those projects, and then as we did it last time, we can include the snippet now instead of the entire list, and now we would have repeatable code, or code that we could reuse on the other pages. Project page still works, and now we can take that snippet and put it on the home page and load it there as well. But you might have already spotted an issue. It doesn't really work, so it doesn't give us a list of projects. And taking a look at the snippet, it's quite clear why this doesn't work, because in this snippet we reference the current page, and the current page in this context here is the home page and no longer the projects page, so we can't get access to the children of the projects page any longer, and the home page doesn't have any children, so this code really doesn't work. So we would need to use our page helper here and move to the projects page, and then we can get the children of projects. and this works on the home page, and this of course also works on the projects page. Now this is cool, but now this would copy basically what we have on the projects page, which is not very usual, so you wouldn't probably want this. You want some modified way to display projects on the home page. And we can simply do this by, no, we can't simply do this without explaining it a little further. So something that we might want to do is, for example, to show only 3 projects on the homepage, the last 3. This works fine here, but again, because we're using the snippet, then we have the same issue on the projects page. So what we can do now is we can inject data or options into our snippets and then make parts like this configurable on a template basis, for example. So in this case, it would be kind of cool if we could modify the limit of pages that we show on the projects page and that we also show on the home page. And we can do that by injecting such options into our snippets. And we do that with a second argument, which is an array. And within that array, we can define our own options now. So I already set up the limit here. So I'm using a limit option, and I'm passing a number of projects that I want to show. So let's say on the projects page, I want to have 20 of those, whereas on the home page, I might just want 3. And as soon as I do that, I can use this option now within my snippet by using that limit variable that I just created. So by passing those options here, setting that name also sets the name of the variable that I can use within the snippet. And then I have a configurable part of the snippet that can now be modified based on its context. And then we get what we wanted. So we have like all the projects on the projects page, and we have like only 3 projects on the home page. So that's quite useful already. But this still isn't like the perfect way to do it, because we might want to even have more control over those projects on the homepage. Maybe we want to sort them differently. Maybe we want to only include featured projects that we mark somehow later. Maybe we want to, just modify the list here some more. And we can't really do this, so this would be very limited. Those options that we pass to a snippet, they don't necessarily just have to be something like a number or a string. They can be pretty much anything. So we can also pass the collection of pages to the snippet that we want to show in the list. And this is exactly what we are going to do. So we remove this again. This was just a way that you can do it. Of course, it's totally fine. But I'm going to cut this part here, and I'm going to create a new projects variable here. And now I need to pass projects instead of a limit. And then again, let's wrap this a bit more so it's easier to read for you. So then again, we can now decide what we put inside the project snippet and what is going to be displayed in the list. In case of our projects template, we take our children and we take the listed one. So pretty much the same thing that we had before. But on our home page, we can now be a lot more specific and say, okay, we go to projects, and then we take the listed one again, but limit it. So we have the same result as before. I'm wrapping such snippet options in that way. And I'm also often, when those chains get too long, I'm also wrapping those chains a bit like promise syntax in JS, how you would format those. I think it's a lot more readable this way, so especially if those chains get even longer. But that's just a side note here. So yeah, this would replicate what I just did before. We have the project on the homepage, same thing as before, projects on the project page. But now we have a lot more control, of course. So we can say, okay, we sort those. So let's just flip the collection. we remove the collection around. That's another thing that you can chain here. So we don't take the first ones first, we take the last ones first. Maybe that's something you want to do. A typical thing that's very useful is the shuffle functionality. So you can shuffle the collection before it gets limited. Always be sure to do that before you limit it, because otherwise you only shuffle those 3 that you get. And then we get random projects on every page reload, which is quite nice on a homepage. Or we could say we sort them maybe by the title, ascending, descending, whatever you come up with, what kind of project structure you have, or what kind of product structure you have. Subpages in general, you can then combine those methods in all ways and then get to the result that you want. Let's stay with the shuffle feature because I quite like this. So that would be a lot more useful homepage now, a homepage scenario that is a nice introduction to the projects that you have. As a next step, maybe our client or we as a team want more control of what ends up here. So the shuffle feature is nice, but there are some projects that might not work so great on the homepage, so we need some way of control. Control is always great, you know. In this case, what we can do, or what I want to do here, is I want to create a new featured field for each project and create a little toggle in the panel. And with that toggle, you can switch this featured field to true or false. And we want to filter that so that in the end, I get a list of all the featured projects on the homepage. So how do we do that? As a first step, we need that featured field and we need to create some featured projects. So we move on to our blueprints, and we already created a project blueprint for the project interface. This is what we see here. And I think it would be kind of cool to put a toggle field below the headline or the heading. Yeah, that makes sense. So let's open up the blueprint file. And just to give you a little back view on this, on what we did here. So we used our columns layout feature for our sections. We created one column on the left and one column on the right, so they both have a width of 1/2. And then within those columns, we created the gallery section on the left, which is a file section that gives us the option to upload files for this page and sort them and edit them and have this nice card layout. And then on the right, we have the fields, so we can store all kinds of additional data there for the projects. And this is down here. So we are going to add a new field here, and we call it featured. So the first part of the field is always the field name. This is what is going to be stored in your text file later. You will see that in a second. And then you decide the type next, and Kirby will automatically set the label based on the name. So it will uppercase the first character and then create the label by that. If you want to be more specific, you can create your own label, of course. Maybe in this case we are happy with featured, but we want to provide some additional help text for this field. So let's say, okay, featured will be featured on the home page. So you can give some additional context here, what happens when you click that toggle. We reload the panel, and then we will see the field, and we get a new toggle field here, and we can switch that on and off. We can also set the text for on and off, so it doesn't have to be called on and off. It can also be yes, no, or whatever you come up with. So yeah, we create a couple featured fields. So we have the animals that are featured. Maybe the sky project is really nice, so we feature that. Maybe let's stick with 2 featured projects. Why not? So we have that new featured field. Let's have a quick look at the content. What happened there in the content files. So we move to our projects folder, we move to the animals folder because that was the first featured project. And in that project txt, if I open that up, you can now see Kirby has added a featured field, and it has set the content to true. So this is basically what it does for you. And this is also the connection. Here's the name that we set here. So going back to our home PHP template, we can now filter our lists. And we are going to filter this by our featured field. And we only want those that have a value that is true. The filtered by function in collections is really powerful. So you can filter by all sorts of fields. All fields that you have in your project or in your pages in general can be used here. And then you can not only use something like true or false, or like A or B, or like a value as a second parameter. You can also define additional operators here. So you can say it contains foo, or it doesn't contain a certain kind of string, or it starts with a string. Whoops. It starts with a string, or it ends with a string. So there's a list of operators that you can use to filter the projects or the pages that you want included in your list. So we just stick with true here. And now we should see a list of filtered pages on our homepage that we can now control from the panel. If we switch on another project, it will automatically appear in the list. Save that. It appears in the list. And yeah, we are ready to go. So that's a very basic feature, but it's very usable already, and it's pretty common. So I built this kind of thing like plenty of times. You probably did that too. So you now see how it's done. Good. This is what I wanted to show you for the home page. You can easily extend this now. Just think about, at some point you would add a blog to this site, or maybe a new section in general, or whatever, maybe a product section. You could combine this now, create an additional section below here where you use data from another page. Maybe you even have like multiple pages and you arrange that. That's the same way that we do it on the Kirby website, on the Kirby homepage. We pull in data from a features page, and we pull in data from various parts and combine that on our homepage. As a next step, I want to make this thingy here a bit more useful, or go into details about a single page template. So let's close this for now to clean up a bit, and go to the project template. We already have that. And let's talk a bit more about fields, because we already used fields from our text files in a couple scenarios, most of the times just a title. And those fields are really powerful. So we only really use the plain output that comes from a field, but this is not what you have to stick with. You can modify whatever is stored in the text file. And we have so-called field methods for this. So you can also chain again those fields and combine them with additional methods. In this case, for example, we could say the title should always be written in uppercase, or there's also lowercase, of course. We could shorten the title and say it must not be longer than 12. Well, it's not longer than 12. Very good example. So it must not be longer than 4, and then it would automatically truncate that and add the ellipsis at the end. So you get like a multitude of functions that you can use on fields to work with those fields. And there's quite some useful stuff in there. There's the list of it is all in the reference. I won't go into detail about each and every field method, but just to show you how to use them. And what I want to show you is I set up this heading field here as a next step. And let's stick with the animal project. And the animal project doesn't have a heading field yet. Or any content for the heading field yet. It has the title, but no heading field yet. So if we would replace this title field with the heading field, it would be empty. That's not exactly great. And I said last time, or I mentioned it last time, that we can react on any field content and react on if the field is empty or if it's not empty with two methods. The first one is empty. So we can say, okay, if it is empty, we do something. So we create an if clause around it. Or we can negate this and say, oh, it's not empty. So we would say, okay, if it's not empty, we take the heading, and else maybe we provide a fallback, or maybe we use the title as a fallback. So that would be something that we could do to fix this issue. And for the title, yeah, it works fine for the title. It works even better if you think about switching on or off entire parts of a template. So you could say there is another toggle that switches on like a cover section or an intro section, or you could switch it off like that, and then you can check if is it true or if is it false. Or you could say, okay, if there's some intro text, I create some HTML around that intro text. But if there's no intro text, I don't want all this HTML to be created. So this is basically what you can do with those methods, and how you can then modify the template code that you write around those conditions in your content But for this particular case, when we have such a one-liner and we only want to create a headline, this if clause is a bit heavy. And there's fortunately a better way to do this. And that's the so-called OR method. So we can say, if there's a heading, then take the heading, and otherwise take our fallback. And that fallback can be a simple string or any kind of value that you put in there. So in this case, it would fall back to the fallback. It can also be another field from the page or from anywhere else, from the site maybe. So you could say, okay, we use the title here in our OR function, and then the title is being used whenever there is no heading. And that's now like a really compact and working solution for this typical scenario. So we'd say animals are great. The heading is there, and then the heading is also shown. An additional effect of this is that we can chain this further. So you could still use upper or lower or anything else afterwards. You could still say whatever comes out of it will then be turned into upper or lower case, or shortened, or any of the other functions. So that would be a typical thing to do with fields. We also have a text field here, and I also want to talk about those a bit more, because text would normally probably go into some kind of container, maybe an article container, or just such a simple div. Let's call it text. So you would have more control over the styling, and this would be like some more long form text, as we can see here in the text field. Hello world. And by default, if we do this, Kirby will always output the raw information that comes from the text file. It doesn't make any assumptions about what kind of data is being stored in those files, in those fields. It just gives you the raw value of it, which results in plain text, basically. So you don't get any HTML around this. It's just the div, and then within the div, you get the plain text. So having a look at this text field, we probably want to add some markup to this. So maybe either write some HTML, probably not. In our case, what we often use is Markdown. So you write text and then you add some Markdown formatting to it. But again, we haven't done anything with this yet, so it would just put the stars around the world word. Plain text, as I said before. So we somehow need to tell Kirby that this is Markdown and that we want it to pass that. And we can do that again with a field method called Markdown. So from now on, Kirby automatically transfers or passes the Markdown within the text field value and then creates the HTML for us. So that's pretty cool. And we have an extended version of that called Kirbytext. And that extended version takes all what is in Markdown, so you can write normal Markdown as you know it, but then also introduces a few tags that make writing Markdown a bit more simple in our opinion. So a typical thing that I always trip over would be like how to write links in Markdown. I mean, not simple ones, those are really simple. Like if you want to just create a link without some specific link text, you can do this in Markdown, which is kind of nice. But if you want to create a real link with some link text, I always forget the syntax. Is the how are the square brackets in front or afterwards? Is the URL in the square brackets or is it in the other ones? I always forget it. So what we have instead is we have Kirby tags, how we as we call them, and there are a couple of those, and one of them is the so-called link tag, and then you can write your links in there. And it does the same thing as what you saw before, but now you can write some text as well. And this would now be transferred to not regular HTML. So you get some regular HTML links here. And there are lots of additional options with those, with the link tag. We also have a multitude of those tags. So we have one to embed images. We have one to embed YouTube videos. So you can do something like YouTube and then put the YouTube URL afterwards, and then it would create an iframe for you and to embed the video. We have a tag to create emails. So if you use this, for example, then it would create an email tag for you, again with a text option, email us, and all kinds of stuff. So it takes care of a lot of those things that are normally hard within plain text and makes it a bit easier. And the coolest part about this is that you can take that and create your own tags with plugins. So if you have something that you would like to include in such text blocks, maybe a call to action button or a gallery or like a certain JavaScript snippet thingy, you could create your own plugin for it, and the plugin definition is pretty simple. It's all in docs. I might make a video about it later. This is too advanced now for this video, but just you know that you can do that. Okay, so this would be another typical thing. Whenever you have long form text, you probably want to use the Kirbytext method on that one. And with this, we got a lot more far with our nice project template. The styling, leave the styling aside, it still looks like crap, but that's a different topic. Next up, we have those beautiful images here. And again, we want to have some more control over those images. You see that by default, the files section, if you use that, is sortable. So you can move images around, which is really nice. But what happens with that sorting? How is that done? I mean, with pages, it's clear. We have been talking about that last time. So for pages, Kirby handles those prefixed numbers for you when you sort. So that's quite obvious. But for files, that's a different thing, because we don't want to mess around with your file names. We don't want to prefix those with numbers as well. I feel like that's the wrong approach, because those are your files and maybe you want to provide them for your customers to download them. Maybe it's a catalog of your products and you have a very specific name in mind for that catalog, or you want to be very specific in the file name because Google should be indexing that, and we don't want to mess around with this. What you can see here is that Kirby created additional text files though as soon as I started sorting them. And if I open them up, you can see that the sorting is in that text file. Taking a step back to the Finder, you can also see the way that those text files are named. They are always follow the syntax that there is the file name of the file they belong to, and then there's just the .txt extension. So by doing that, by putting another text file into your content folder and giving it a name that refers to the original file name, you can attach data to any kind of media file, to images, to PDFs, to Excel sheets, whatever you put in there, you can put additional data to it. And Kirby does use that for the sorting of those files. And then we can later use that in our template to sort those files accordingly. So we would use our sort by function, and then use that sort field. That's enough because that's already the way how it's being sorted. If you want to turn it around, you could change the sorting direction here, but normally this is all you have to do. And then from this point on, the gallery is sorted in the way that we sorted in the back end. So if I move the elephant further down, the elephant goes further down and gallery is sorted accordingly. Just so you know that you have to take this sorting that comes from the panel and use it in your template. So again, Kirby doesn't make the assumption that it's automatically what you want. You have to opt into this, so to say. Talking about those text files for any kind of media, you can put anything else in there. So they are really thought in the same way as page data or site data is stored. If you need additional files to maybe add some captions for your images, or add a photographer or a copyright notice, or maybe a license or something, you can put it in there. Same syntax, you create a file, call it caption, for example, and then this is a nice bird. And now we have a caption for our little bird here. And as soon as we did that, we can also use it. So going back to our project.php template, looking at the loop, we are looping here through all the images. We are sorting them as I just did. We resize the images for the gallery so they don't exceed 1200 pixels in the width. And additionally, below that, we can now add our caption. Again, if the field is there, it's all good. It will show the content of the field. If the field is not there, nothing will happen, so nothing really breaks. If we reload the page, this one doesn't have a caption yet. This one has a caption, so the caption appears. That's really great for such galleries, where you can put anything in there that you need for the gallery. Maybe you have some additional layout information that should be stored with each image. Maybe some images should be bigger than others. Maybe one image is featured. Maybe you have another feature toggle then again. Anything that you can think of that should be in here. Typically, what you want in here is also some alternative text, like colorful bird. Did I actually write bird? Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah, whatever. So, okay, moving on. We somehow need a way to add this in the panel. So if you click on that particular file in the panel, you will see that we haven't set up any fields yet. So this is empty. It tells us that there's no blueprint set up for this particular file. So we somehow need to tell it that we want those fields to exist here in the panel. And now let's have another look at the blueprints folder. You can see that pages blueprints in Kirby 3 are organized in a pages folder, and blueprints for files are organized in a files folder. That sounds not too complicated. And we start again with a default.yaml. This is again the description how files should look like. We start with a file, or maybe call it image, whatever you want. And then we create some fields in here. By the way, we saw how you define sections in blueprints. You can be more specific now. You can create another section layout with multiple sections here. If you really just need files, you can put that directly into the blueprint. You don't have to use all those features in blueprints that we offer. You don't have to create multiple sections and be very specific about them. You can just put some files in there, and this is exactly what I'm going to do. So I will create a caption field, and I will also create an alt field. I got the feeling that I mix field and file all the time. I hope you stick to me. And I used the wrong type here again. It's really hot, but no excuses. Okay, so when we load this again, those fields appear. Let's make this a text area. Those fields appear, and we can instantly start adding the content that we want. For individual files, we can now navigate through our files. And well, this is not how you write it in English. And now put some data in there, and then from there on we can use it in our templates. Very easy to extend again, put your own fields there, as many as you want. This combination of page fields and file fields can be very, very complex, so you can really extend this to a quite mighty setup. Cool, so we got a lot further with our gallery. The gallery is working, we have captions, we have alternative text, etc., etc. As a last thing for today, I want to show you a few more things that you can do now as a next step to make this project overview a bit better. So to give you more ideas what you can do with blueprints or with blueprint options. Don't want to close that, I want to close that. As a final step, well, those videos, especially the basic ones, are mostly thought as a kind of an overview of what you can do, and then they get more advanced and more advanced with every video, and you get more tools and more options, and you should always take those in combination with the docs and then read a bit further into all these things that you have. But let's make this a bit more fancy, because we have so many cool things that you can do with this pages section. So for our project overview, I used a pages section. As you can see here, I switched the layout to cards so that we get like this nice cards out layout instead of a list. So that would be the default. If you don't specify the layout option, the list will appear. And I moved this to cards to make it resemble what we have in the front end. I also changed the image settings for each individual card. So I set cover to true, which just means the image ratio is no longer being kept, but images just fill the entire card. And I also changed the ratio of the card. You can put in any ratio that fits your images here. So combine this, Kirby will automatically calculate the size then accordingly. So yeah, this is what you can do as like some first steps. What I want to show you though as a next step is oftentimes when you have like this overviews and you have the title of the page, you often also want some kind of additional information about the page. A typical example for my own client project is I've been working with an architecture bureau, and they had an internal ID system for all their projects. They had like a couple hundred projects and like an internal ID system, and they were very much into that ID system. So they wanted a personalized ID below each project. And so we created an ID field and showed that in the overview. And you can do that with the info option. This is some info, and this can be just some text. And then it adds that text as a second line, which is not very helpful most of the times when it's static text, because you probably want to have something that is different on every card. And what I want to introduce you here to is our template syntax for blueprints. We call that like Kirby queries. And you can use those Kirby queries in those curly braces to get access to the data of each individual page in this scenario, or for files when you use a file section. And they work very much in the same way as the things that you use or the field methods and the methods that you use in templates. Well, they work exactly the same way, to be honest. So we can use the current page. And then we have this dot syntax, and we can now, for example, get access to the title of the page and use this as the info. This is very redundant, not very useful, but this can be anything now. So maybe we use the heading here to show that the heading is different, for example, for the animals project. If you have a year, it would be nice to put in here, or maybe a category for the project, or some additional information. You can also combine information by putting various of those curly braces in there, like pretty much in any other template language. You just can't do logic within those templates. They are basically really thought out to be for basic information. But what I want to show you, because it's quite cool for something like this, is you can also access like the images or the files, and then you can count them. So you can use the same collection methods that we provide for our collections, and then combine this to give an idea about the number of images in a project, for example. Or you could count the number of subpages that a page has. All sort of things that you can come up with, or ideas that you might have. And you can do the same thing for the text, for the main text. So the main text in this case would be the page title. We would just duplicate it like this. Maybe you want to do the same thing that we did in the template. So you can say heading or page title, and then you get the heading for the first project. The heading for the first project, and the other ones fall back to their basic title. So yeah, this is kind of what you can do with the text and the info. So this is quite cool. Another important part when you configure those pages sections is when you click on add, you will see that by default you get a selection of all the projects, all the templates that we defined. And that is not oftentimes not very useful. You want to be, we want to be more strict about what can be added as a subpage. And this can be defined with the template option. You can say, okay, I want to be very careful here, and only projects should be allowed. Or you could say, I want to include projects, but there could also be a video project. So you can make a list of those templates that are allowed, and then the select field will adjust to that. In this case, when we reload, you see that the select box is now blocked. It's disabled. It's already preset to project, and so it's not possible to add any other project, any other template type here as a subpage, which is what we want. Something else that I want to show you is, well, you can set a headline, of course. You can normally Kirby takes the name of the section, and again, as with fields, it automatically creates a headline out of this. You probably want to have more control here and say like nice projects or anything else. And we can also say what kind of status is included in that list. Let me do something else before we set that option. Let's say, okay, the Sky project is unlisted, so it doesn't have a sorting number, and the Plants project is still in draft mode, and oh, it's so slow. And the Waterfall is maybe another unlisted one. So now we have a mixed list with pages that are unlisted, listed, and in draft mode. And now we can say, okay, we want to show only those which are listed, or we can say only those which are unlisted. We can, of course, also say we only want to show drafts, and we can combine listed and unlisted. They are both not drafts, they are both published, but the one is sorted and one is not sorted. So if you want to have both of them, you can say published as a status, and then you can filter the list. And that is really cool if you create multiple of those sections. So now you can say, okay, let's create a published list with the listed and the unlisted ones. Call this published as well, and then make a second one, and we call that one drafts, and then make this headline a bit more informative as well. And here we use the drafts. But instead of the layout cards, we take the list layout for our drafts. And then when we reload, we get the drafts as a list, but the published project as a full card layout, which works better, especially if the drafts don't have an image yet. So if I add a draft something, and I go back to my projects overview, I have like, yeah, it's not as as worrisome as having like this huge empty thing in a cards layout. So the drafts, the lists are most of the times really working better, so you can combine this easily. But having a look at this, there's a lot of redundant code again. So this reminds me a lot of the things that we worked on in the templates, where you have like, where we got to the snippets and we could then offload some of the the template code into various snippets and make it less redundant. And we can do the same things for blueprints here. So let's take the entire options for this published section and cut this. No, not cutting it, we copy it for now. And you can create additional folders for so-called blueprint mix-ins. We call this one projects, or blueprint snippets, if you want to use the same term. And we put all the options that I just copied inside this YAML file. And from now on, we make this a bit less specific. So the headline is just projects, and we remove the status, but that's about it. So we have this, all those options, they should stay the same. And now we can remove this, and we can use our mixin instead by going to the folder that we just created. So you can create any kind of folder, you can even create subfolders, and then you can reference those mix-ins like this. And now we get the same definition that we have in that mix-in, and we can override certain parts of that. So the headline was too broad, so we switch it to publish projects, and then the status should be overwritten to published. But the rest is fine, and we do this exact same thing for our drafts and say, okay, those are the drafts, and here we only want the drafts, and the layout should be a list. And then we have a lot less work to do now in this case, with the same result in the end. And of course we can reuse the same mix-in now in multiple places. If we maybe use an overview of projects also on the homepage, we can do that. Or maybe we have something that works the same way, but we only want to override certain parts, or maybe have products or anything, and they pretty much use the same kind of page section layout or options, then this would work as well. Mix-ins are really powerful, especially with those new options that you have in Kirby. Use them all over the place. They help to keep your blueprints simple and nice, and yeah, they're a cool way of handling this. So we achieved quite a lot for the site today. So the homepage now has some featured projects overview. The project's detail pages have a lot more fields, and you can easily see how this could be extended. You can work with the fields now. In the panel we have a better project overview. We have fields for our for each individual file in our projects. So yeah, there's quite a lot covered already, and you can take this from here and just experiment around. I mean, this is anyway the best advice that I can give. Play with this, play with what you saw, take either the plain kit or take the starter kit at this point, and then just play with the options that are in there and just get familiar with those. I think I wrap it up for today. The next one will probably be then a bit more specific. I wanted to create the live stream today about controllers, models, and collections, and then I thought, well, there are a couple steps that we have to take before that can happen, but that might then be the next video. So thank you very much for watching. Have a great day. Enjoy the weather, even if it might be as hot as it's here, and see you next week. Bye bye.